Hello, students. Today we're going to talk about the indirect questions. This is the About the Language from stage 25, and I wanted to show you what we have in number one, right? We know what questions look like in Latin. We have question words, right? Interrogative pronouns, quis, quid, cor, ubi, quo modo. So here we have who, audivet, right? Quis clamorem audivet, who heard the shout? Or ubi, so where? Habitat rex, where does the king live? And we know in English too, we can also indirectly ask these questions. You do this all the time, right? You can say like, Mr. Yagi asked me where the Latin word was, or Mr. Yagi told me why that meant what it meant, right? My friend wondered where I was. So those are indirect questions because in each case you have a question built into it, right? Where is the word? Where was I? What does it mean, etc. And so you're indirectly reporting that question. Okay. Uh, Same thing in Latin. So we have the centurion knew, or rather didn't know. Well, the question is who heard the shout, right? Just like we had up here. Who heard that shout? Well, when we report that indirect question, the centurion didn't know who heard the shout or who had heard the shout. Now, there's a sequence of tense thing here you don't have to worry about. In Latin, the only thing you have to worry about is just recognizing that really easy to recognize pluperfect subjunctive, right? Isse. So, quis clamorem audi viset. So, the word, the action of that question, Latin puts in the subjunctive. Here, the horseman found out where the king was living. And in that case, it sounds good to use that imperfect idea, right? So, the horseman understood, they found out, they learned where the king was living. So we're just putting basically two things together that we already know, right? In the last stage, we learned the pluperfect subjunctive, which we have there with audiviset. We learned about the imperfect subjunctive, which we have with habitaret. And then we know the rest of this. So this hopefully should be just a matter of recognizing things that you already know. And if we go down here, we can see just some examples, right? So the direct question, quid vercobrix fecit? What has he done? Well, milites intellexerunt quid vercobrix fecit. So the soldiers understood what he had done. Quis appropinquat? Who's coming? Who's approaching? Custos nescebat quis appropinquaret? Right. So the guard didn't know who was approaching. And so nothing's really changed here except for that Latin uses that subjunctive, which we learned last stage. And then again, ubi sunt barbari, where the barbarians, Romani cognoverunt, ubi barbari essent. So the Romans found out where the barbarians were. And remember that, that verb might look a little bit strange. It's just the imperfect of the verb to be, right? The verb to be assume esse fui. So the imperfect is taking that imperfect, that infinitive form, so esse, and then just adding the nt, just like we did with appropinquare and adding the t there. So your exercise that I'm going to have you work on is looking at these direct and indirect questions, right? So for instance, number one, we have quis puerum interfecit, right? Who killed the boy? And then the Latin version of who no one knew, or no one used to know, no one was knowing. But whenever we have these cognitive knowing, thinking, feeling, probably even though it's imperfect technically in Latin, it probably just sounds better to say perfect, right? So no one knew who had killed the boy. Okay, so I'm going to have you practice that, and then we're going to follow up and see how you did.